So what is your understanding of GRE RC? Let's get straight into the topic without wasting much time. What is your understanding of GRE RC? What do you mean by RC? Anyone has any idea? Guys, am I audible? Yes, okay. Thank you. Reading comprehension, says Ramya. The toughest part, says Shravan. Shilpa says reading comprehension. Saurabh says reading comprehension. Okay. Ankit says royal challenge. It definitely is a royal challenge. I would agree to that. Very tough to answer, says Gokul. Very complicated, says Tarun. Hari says mystery. Easy to lose marks section, says Priyash. Okay. Alright guys, as you guys all know, this is GRE, there's a section called the RC section, that is the reading comprehension section in GRE, where you'll be given a passage, okay, an article or a blog post, or you know, or any news article, okay. You'll be given a passage, okay, that can be quite long, okay, and quite tough to read, okay, and you'll be asked some questions based on that, okay, based on your understanding of that passage. You'll be asked some questions. All you have to do is answer those questions. Do you guys think it's simple? Sounds simple, isn't it? Yes, how many of you agree? Vishnu says no. Vishnu says straight away no. Tarun says yes. Tushar, Raja, Father say no. Vishwendra says no. Ankit agrees with me. Meets understanding, says Bhuvnesh. Ashna says no. Sahil says sounds simple but isn't. Vidyasagar says very, very easy. Okay, I like that confidence. Gokul says let's see how you help us. Okay, that's an interesting answer. Alright guys. Okay, so let's start with the RC section. Now RC section consists of 50% of the total marks of the whole verbal section. Okay, it's almost 50% of the whole verbal section. So it's quite a huge topic, okay, and it's not something we can ignore, okay. Actually there's nothing in the GRE that one should ignore. Okay, we should cover all the topics, okay, but RC is something that definitely we should not ignore. Okay, now let me ask you another question. When like going back to your graduation, undergraduation studies, okay, when you come across a very difficult topic, what would you do? Would you leave it? Would you leave it like that, or would you go ahead, put some effort and try to understand it? What would you do when you come across a difficult topic? Definitely I'll try to give it multiple reads, says Bhuvnesh. I'll try to understand, says Chakradharni. Okay. Okay, guys, I hope I'm pronouncing your names right. Okay, Vishnu says I will try to understand. Marichandra says practice. Try to understand it, says Sahil. Think deeply. Will try best. Okay, great. Okay, so you guys say that you guys will give the extra effort and try to understand whatever is it that you have to understand, right? Okay. There's something similar that we have to do in RC. Okay, when most of the passages, okay, if you don't have enough habit of reading, okay, these passages are going to be very difficult to understand. Okay, and then and when it's very difficult to understand, we can't ignore. Okay, just like what you did in your undergraduate studies, you have to put extra effort and try to understand them. Okay, now how do we do that? We'll discuss today. Okay, now I'm going to show you a picture. Okay, you'll see a picture on your screen. I want you guys to see that, look at the picture and tell me what did you understand by the picture. Why am I showing this picture to you in an RC seminar? What do you think, guys? Further says don't know. An anaconda tries to eat a man. Okay. Alan says the guy is us. Alan, you are absolutely right. How do you infer that? The snake is too long, says Marky. The snake is too long. Things are okay. Things. How to approach RC? RC is try to tap us in the exam. Hypnotize. Correct. Okay. So what you see in the picture is a long snake. Okay, and you see Mowgli in the picture. You guys might know Mowgli. Okay, Jungle Book. Yes, correct, Bhuvnesh. Okay, so this snake is very long. It has twisted Mowgli in its it's twisted around Mowgli, and it's hypnotizing Mowgli. Okay, it's long and turning and twisted the snake. Okay, very long, very twisting and turning. Okay, and it's hypnotizing Mowgli. Mowgli is not able to be in consciousness. Okay, so that is how most of the reading comprehension passages will be. So they'll be quite long. They'll be twisted and turned. Okay, it won't be like a simple, it won't be like a simple article that you'll be able to understand. Okay, but most of them will be quite difficult, quite tough, and since they are written by very advanced authors, okay, they tend to be quite difficult. Okay, and I'm not trying to scare you. That is the general scenario in the RC section. Okay, so it's not going to be easy. So how do we make it easy? What is it that you have to do to get to the to crack these things, to make an article sound interesting to you? Okay, now guys, okay, many people are asking me that that you guys have been muted. So let me announce that, guys, you've been muted by default by the GoToWebinar software. Okay, the only one who is unmuted here is me. Okay, I'm going to talk, and you guys can post in your questions just like you're posting it right now in the chat box. Okay, you won't be able to get the audio access. Your mics will be muted. Okay, that is by default from the GoToWebinar software. Okay, let's continue. Now I'm going to show you one sentence very quickly. Okay, and tell me, what did you understand by this sentence? Or rather, I should ask you, did you understand this sentence? How many of you understood this sentence? Ashna says, Ashna understood, Shilpa understood, Tarun didn't, Adhyasha didn't, Arshi understood. Okay, mixed reactions here. Okay, all right. Okay, let's not get into the meaning. Let's not get into the technical meaning, what supernova means and all that. Okay, just look at the sentence. Okay, and do you think it's an easy sentence? Yes. Okay, most of you say yes. Okay, so it was quite easy. Okay, it was quite easy. Okay, not bothered about what supernova is. Okay, it just says supernova triggered star formation. Okay, so that means there is something called supernova which triggered the formation of a star. Simple, right? Okay, now why did you guys understand this? It was a simple sentence. Agree? Agree with me? Yes. Only one idea. It had only one idea with it. Okay, it was only communicating one idea. Agree? Agree. Agree, says Ankit. All right. Okay. Now it was easy to retain in memory. If I ask you now, to repeat the sentence, would you be able to do that without seeing on the screen? Yes. Correct. Okay, so it was simple sentence, but it was short and sweet, so it was easy to understand. Okay. Now that is not the case in an actual RC passage. Now there is one more sentence. Okay, I'll read it out for you. If a supernova, the explosion of a massive star, triggered star formation from dense clouds of gas and dust, and if the most massive star to be formed from the cloud evolved into a supernova and triggered a new round of star formation, and so on, then a chain of star-forming regions would result, and if many such chains were created in a differentially rotating galaxy, the distribution of stars would resemble the observed distribution in a spiral galaxy. Now, how many of you understood that? Let's see how many of you understood. Shilpa understood, Alan understood, Tejas understood, Shashwat understood. Okay, Vidyasagar says confusing. Fateh says no, Fateh didn't understand, Tarun didn't understand. Saurabh understood. Okay, so okay, again mixed reactions here. Some of you understood, some of you didn't. Okay, so let's not get into the meaning again. Let's not get into the technical meaning of it. Okay, let's see what is the composition of this sentence. Okay, it was quite complex compared to the earlier sentence. Yes, it was quite complex. Right. Okay. It had more than one idea. It had more than one idea. Agree? Many ideas. It had many ideas. Yes. Okay. And it was hard to retain in memory. Anyone disagrees with me? No. Okay. So to make a sentence complex, okay, it should be either long, okay, and it should have more than one idea. Okay, it should have about 2 or 3 ideas or even more than that, and it should be hard to retain in memory. Okay, if these are the 3 qualities you add to a simple sentence, it becomes complex. Correct? Yes. Right. Okay. So these kind of sentences you will be encountering in your RC passages. Now, basically, if you don't go into the details of it, the first sentence and the second sentence almost exhibited the same meaning. Okay, they tried to tell you the same. Only thing is that the second sentence was in much more detail, right? Okay, so the second sentence is how you'll get most of the RC passages. Okay, now not worrying too much about it. Okay, it was just an example to show you how it would look like. Okay, now we'll go into the basics of how exactly we can crack that. Okay, all right. Okay, now when there is a long sentence, when there is a complex sentence, okay, it's what happens. Now the complexity and organization strain the limits of short-term memory. Okay, now every one of us have something called a short-term memory. Okay, so what short-term memory does is when you're reading a sentence, okay, it comes into play. Okay, while you're completing the whole sentence, it helps you remember the initial part of the sentence. Okay, so that while you reach to the last part of the sentence, it helps you recollect it. Okay, say if you are reading a particular sentence, okay, while reaching the last word of the sentence, if you forget what is in the first part of it, would you be able to understand the sentence? No, says Arushi says no. Vetsa says no, not at all. Correct? Okay. So there is something called the short-term memory. Okay. The short-term memory is actually very short. Okay. And it is used when you're reading a particular sentence. So when the sentence becomes long, you are not able to make use of it. Okay, because there is only so much you can remember at one time. Okay, that's human tendency, that's natural tendency. If you read more, your short-term memory will increase. Okay, if you keep reading a lot of articles, okay, and if you have the habit of reading it from your childhood, it will increase. Okay, but for most of us, for 80% of us, okay, short-term memory is actually very short. Okay, if a sentence exceeds some length, a particular length, it's difficult for us to understand. Okay, so it often requires us to read the sentence several times in order to understand it. Okay, when you don't understand a sentence, what do you do? What do you do when you don't understand a sentence? Tejas says reread it. Harmanpreet says read it again. Hari Krishna says read it again. Smarky says read it again. Read it again and again, says Adyasha. Tarun says read again. Father says feel confused. Okay, what is the solution, Father? Cut into parts. Right. Okay. Vishwender is far ahead of all of us. All right. Okay, so when we don't understand a sentence, we have to read it again. And if you are reading a sentence again and again in the GRE exam, what will happen? What will happen if you're reading a sentence again and again in the GRE exam? Wastages of time, exactly. We don't have that much time. We can't afford to read a sentence again and again, especially when we are writing the GRE. Okay, if you're on a Sunday morning, if you're sitting laid back in your house, and you're reading a newspaper, then you can take as much time as possible. But that is not the case with the GRE exam, right? Okay, so that's very important to reduce the time in reading. Okay, how exactly do we do that? Okay, we need breaks in the flow of ideas so that we can assimilate what we have read and then move on. Okay, we can break the long sentence into more manageable units from which ideas can be understood easily. Okay, now guys, if you are given something, if you are given a very huge task, very long task, okay, how will you do it? Will you do it part by part, or will you do it all at once? How are you going to do it? Part by part, correct? Okay, when a bridge is built, how is it built? Is it built block by block, or is it built all at once? How is a bridge built? Stone by stone, block by block, correct? Okay, so that is what we are going to do exactly in an RC passage. Okay, when the sentence is too long, let it be. You'll break it according to your understanding, and then understand each part separately, so that you'll finally be able to make a meaning out of it. Okay, we can break long sentence into more manageable units from which ideas can be understood easily. Okay, now it so happens that each sentence gives out an idea. Okay, maybe sometimes it may be even more than one, sometimes even 5, or sometimes even 10. Okay, but what is important is that you have to break those sentences down in such a way, okay, such a way that each part of it will give one idea out. Okay, each part of it will communicate one particular thing, so it will be very easy to understand. Okay, so that is the basic theme of it. Now getting into the details, how exactly do we break it? Can we break it after every word? Can we break it after every 2 words? Okay, can we break it after every 4 words, every 5 words? How exactly do we do it? We'll see. Okay, now but before getting into the much technical stuff, okay, I want to understand what is your understanding of a passage. What do you guys think a passage is? What is a passage? Don't look at the screen, guys. Tell me, what do you understand by a passage? Arushi says a story. Group of sentences says Marke. Story about something, a paragraph says Ramya. A part of a long story says Nabiha. Collection of difficult sentences says Adhyasha. Shravan says an article. Alan says collection of information. An article says Tushar, or logic says Gaurav. Asna says an extract. Right. Okay, you guys are almost right. Okay, you guys know what a passage is. Okay, to put it bluntly, a passage is just a flow of ideas spread over a number of paragraphs. Okay, consider an idea like a brick. Okay, you put a brick over the other, then another brick over it. Okay, then another brick over it, and then cement it. You'll get a wall. Correct. Similarly, you take an idea, put another idea over it, put another idea over it. Okay, then it finally forms a passage. Okay, understood? Okay, but if you are building a brick wall, okay, if you're using different kinds of bricks, okay, if you're say one brick is smaller and another brick is bigger, what will happen? What will happen if you're using different kind of bricks? Imbalance. It will fall. Correct. Right. Sri Chakradharni. Correct. Okay. So similarly, when a writer writes a passage, okay, say you are the writer, you are writing something, okay, when you're writing an article, or you're writing a blog post, or you're writing any article, okay, you'll make sure that all the ideas that you are putting in, they are somewhat coherent. Okay, they are related to each other, they are coherent, or they are in context with each other. You can't just put some random thoughts, random ideas and put them together and call it an article, right? Okay, so when an author writes, he is sure to put ideas that are relevant to each other. Okay, so that is what a passage is. Now why I am telling you this is I'll explain it much better with an example later. Okay, now understanding a passage. Okay, like I said, ideas, passage is a flow of ideas. Okay, now if you now first, when you come across an RC passage, okay, the first thing you have to do is extract an idea. Okay, next is to relate the ideas, and third is to draw conclusions. Okay, like I said, every sentence will exhibit an idea. Okay, every sentence will exhibit an idea. Every sentence will tell you that the author wants you to understand something. Okay, then he'll relate those ideas. Okay, he'll relate the first idea with the second idea. Okay, how are they related? Okay, then third, third you have to draw conclusions. Okay, extract ideas, relate ideas, and draw conclusions. These are the 3 steps of understanding a passage. Okay, all right, guys, all clear till now? All clear till now? All understood? Yes. Right. Okay. Now extract ideas. How do we extract ideas? Extract the independent ideas from the statements. Okay. Now, like I said, each sentence will have an idea. Okay. Extract it. Okay. Now, extract it in the sense you have to understand what is the author trying to say. Okay. Then you move on to the next sentence. Understand how the ideas are related. The other sentence, the second sentence, will have another idea. Okay. How are they related? Connect with each other. Then draw conclusions. What is the author trying to say? Put yourself in the author's shoe. Okay. What is the tone in which he is saying? Okay. What is he trying to conclude? Okay. So now this is the basic thing. Okay. Okay. So now someone was asking me, okay, should we note it all down? Should we write them all down? How do we do that? Okay. No. Okay, you need not write what I just said. You need not extract the ideas and write them down. You need not make notes. Okay, if you make notes, you might end up spending more time than the article actually requires you to. Okay, do it mentally. Okay, mentally you have to break a long sentence into smaller segments. Okay, now initially it might feel very difficult. It might feel difficult. It's like, and you will be very slow. Okay, you will be very slow thinking, oh, I'm not even, it takes so much time to think all this and come to a conclusion. Yes, initially you will be very slow, but as you go on, as you come across 2-3 articles and you do the same, okay, it will become much easier. It's just like when you first ride a bicycle. When you first ride a bicycle, okay, do you does someone help you? Does someone catch hold of the bicycle when you are riding, or you can do it on your own on the very first time? Does someone catch hold of you when you're riding a bicycle? Someone to help us, right? Correct. Okay, so someone helps you, and then you start very slow. Okay, you are very wobbly. Okay, just to ride 5 meters, you'll take a lot of time. Yeah, and in spite of someone helping you, you don't get it. But as you practice, one day you'll realize this person who is helping you has left hold of the bike. Okay, and you are on your own, right? And you'll be very confident. Okay, that I am doing it myself. You can maneuver, you can take turns, you can go speed. Okay, so that is how the RC experience will also be. Okay, you do it in your mind. Okay, initially it will be very difficult, but as you practice, okay, it will be much easier, and I promise you, you'll start liking the liking the idea of going through RC passages. Okay, it will be much more fun for you. Okay, all right. Okay, so now break long sentences as we discussed. How exactly do we break long sentences? Any idea, guys? Can you guess? Any one of you? How exactly do we break down long sentences? Vetsa Hari says commas. Sri Chakradharni says no idea. Hanisha says after every clause. Tejas says spot the conjunctions. Correct. Full stops, punctuations. Right. Okay, so most of you are right. Okay, let's see that in detail. Now somebody said conjunctions. Now let's come to conjunctions. Okay, now guys, can anyone tell me what are conjunctions? What do you understand by conjunctions? Arushi says joining words. They join the sentences, join words, join two sentences. Right. Okay, so conjunctions are those words which we use to join two sentences. Okay, so so now there are two kinds of conjunctions. One is coordinating conjunctions, and the other is subordinating conjunctions. Okay, and coordinating conjunctions are something that you're seeing on the screen. Okay, when you use these conjunctions, both the sentences that have been joined, they are they are very independent of each other. Okay, one sentence doesn't depend on the other. Okay, they are very independent. So these conjunctions give equal importance to both the sentences that we use to join. Okay, I'll give you an example. My name is Mani Kumar and I am a senior GRE expert. Okay, so what is the conjunction in there? What is the conjunction there? And. Correct. Okay, so even if you break it down, say my name is Mani Kumar, that is one sentence, and I am a senior GRE expert, that is the second sentence. So both of them are independent. Nothing is dependent on each other, right? So those kind of conjunctions are called coordinating conjunctions. Okay. Now there is another kind of conjunction, that is the subordinating conjunction. Okay. Now subordinating conjunctions are those conjunctions which which when we use, they give importance to one clause over the other. Okay. They're one of those clauses is dependent on the other clause. Okay, so that is what a subordinating conjunction is, something that you see on your screen. Okay, understood, guys? What are subordinating conjunctions and what are coordinating conjunctions? Am I clear? Okay. Okay, now since you guys understood, I'd like all of you to form a sentence using any of these subordinating conjunctions. Use any of these subordinating conjunctions, form a sentence. I'll give you exactly 10 seconds time. Guys, you have to be very quick, because GRE is a time-based test and you have to be very aware of that. You will fail unless you study hard. Okay. Since he was ill, he did not go to school, Arushi says. Correct? Although I started late, I made it on time for the meeting, says Meena. Correct. She was singing while she was listening to music, says Sri Chakradharni. Correct. Unless you work hard, you won't succeed. I want to be in class before the bell rings, says Divyesh. When I went home, Ram was sleeping. Correct. Okay. So guys, you understood what are coordinating conjunctions and subordinating conjunctions? Yes? Okay. And you also know how to form sentences with them, right? Okay, so these two are very important. Coordinating and subordinating conjunctions are very important. Okay, so whenever you come across these words, what is the conclusion you can make? Whenever you come across these words in a passage, what do you understand? Break the sentence, split it into parts. Right. Meena says the idea is shifting. That is one way to look at it. Correct. Right. Okay. So coordinating conjunctions and subordinating conjunctions. Okay. One thing is that you have to keep an eye on coordinating and subordinating conjunctions. Okay. Next, what else do you think will help us break down the sentence? What else do you think, guys, will help us break down the sentence? Hari says punctuation marks. Sadyasha says punctuations. Right, absolutely right. Okay, look out for punctuations. Okay, not for now. Full stop is also a punctuation, which the actual word for it is a period. Okay, don't look for periods, because when we use a period in a sentence, the sentence ends there. Okay, so comma, semicolon, colon, and hyphen. Okay, they are generally used to break down the sentence, and they use it to shift an idea, just like Meena said now. They use punctuations to shift an idea. Okay, so now you don't need to understand why a comma is used, why a semicolon is used. Okay, the main idea is to get you to understand that whenever there are punctuations, these kind of punctuations, it's the idea is either shifting, okay, or they are trying to break down a sentence, or trying to form two different sentences and bridging them together using these punctuation marks. Okay, so when you're going through an RC passage, okay, you just have to from the top of your head, okay, you'll have to think that, okay, this is a punctuation mark. Okay, so there are two sentences, there will be two sentences here. Okay, you have to do it subconsciously. Okay, that you won't get that at the very first time. Okay, but when you do 3-4 articles, when you do it the same thing for 3-4 articles, okay, you get into the habit of it, you'll start doing it subconsciously. You won't remember what are conjunctions, what are subordinating or coordinating conjunctions, but you'll definitely know that, okay, this is the word, okay, this is where I split the sentence. Now this is how I have to understand. Okay, so if you look at any avid reader, if you look at any reader who is very much habituated to reading, okay, if you ask him, he'll tell you the same. Okay, break down the sentences, but they do it subconsciously. Okay, they don't do it intentionally. That is, they have had a habit of it from their from the reading habits. Okay, so look out for these subordinating and coordinating conjunctions. Okay, and break down the sentence there. Okay, now how many of you want to actually see actual RC example of an actual RC passage? How many of you want to see an actual RC passage? Tejas wants to see, Adyasha wants to see an example. Ashna says surely, Samir says waiting. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's see an example of an RC passage, and we'll also see how do we do that. Okay. Okay. Now what I'm going to show you right now, it's just an intercept from an actual RC passage from GRE. Okay. Since this is a 1-hour webinar, we are not able to show you a complete RC passage. Okay, so I've taken an intercept from an RC passage. Okay, let's analyze this. Okay, now I'm going to read it out for you. While I'm reading, you can also read it out with me. Okay, in the 19th century, when women began to enter factories, Jules Simon, a French politician, warned that by doing so, women would give up their femininity. Frederick Engels, however, predicted that women would be liberated from the social, legal, and economic subordination of the family by technological developments that made possible the recruitment of the whole female sex into public industry. Observers thus differed on the social effects of mechanization, but they agreed that it would transform women's lives. Okay, so how many of you understood this? How many of you understood this? Adyasha did, Smarky did, Arushi did, Bhuvnesh did. Hari says crystal clear. Manoj says understood. Gaurav understood 80%. Ashna understood. Manoj understood. Gokul understood. Gokul says somewhat. Okay. Alright. Okay. So let's dissect it. Shall we dissect it? Yes. Postmortem of the RC passage. Alright. Okay. So how many sentences were there in the RC passage? Shubham says don't know. Hari says 10. Ashna says 3. 1 says Smarky. 3 is the majority. Okay. Right. So there are 3 sentences in the RC passage, okay, that I just showed you. I have colored them for your convenience. Okay. The first sentence I have colored in white, second in black, the third again in white. Okay. So there are 3 sentences. Okay. Guys, did you see those 3 sentences? How are they long? How are they long, turning and twisting, or are they easy and short, simple and short? Arushi says very long, lengthy. Long but easy, says Tejas. Okay, Tejas feels that it is very easy. Okay, Tejas, I am going to ask you some questions based on the passage. Okay, all right. Okay. Now since we know there are 3 sentences in this passage, what is the next step? Can anyone of you tell me what is the next step? What do we look for? Right, look for conjunctions. Okay, so let's look for conjunctions. Okay. Okay, so I have highlighted the major conjunctions here. Okay, that that would be used to break down the sentence. Okay, so I'll read it out again and I'll try to explain. Okay, in the 19th century when women began to enter factories. Okay, so the author has established the situation here. Okay, just like when you're telling a story, you say, right, that you start with once upon a time in somewhere, once upon a time in the land of something, right? Okay, so you establish situation, you tell where are we starting from. Okay, so the author here has done the same. He is establishing the situation. Then he says, Jules Simon, a French politician, warned that by doing so women would give up their femininity. Okay, so he basically, the author is saying that women started working. Okay, some person named Jules Simon, he warned that if women started working, they would lose their femininity. Okay, so that is what the statement made by Jules Simon. Okay, now in most of the RC passages, okay, nouns, names of people, names of places, okay, and names of say historical places and names of events. Okay, mostly mostly proper nouns. Most of the time you can ignore. Okay, you can see and ignore. Okay, so now Jules Simon, a French politician, we don't want to know who Jules Simon is. He could be a French politician or he could be a stand-up comedian. We don't we don't really care about that. Okay, so we are not reading an RC passage to gain information for general knowledge. We are reading an RC passage just to answer the question that follow. Correct? Agree with me, guys? Yes? Right? Okay, I've seen students who read one sentence again and again trying to understand what it is. Okay, and at the end of the article he comes to know that that wasn't even very relevant, okay, because that was not asked in the question. Okay, so we are not reading an RC passage for general knowledge or information. We are reading it just and answer the question that are followed. Okay, so Jules Simon, French politician, whoever he is, okay, he warned that if women started working, they would lose their femininity. Okay, the first sentence is clear? Yes? Right. Okay. Now coming to the next sentence, Frederick Engels, however. Okay, now here is a word, however. Okay, when we use the word however, what can you expect? What can you expect to be coming? Ashna says contradiction. Opposing idea says Saurabh. In contrast says Hanisha. Arushi says contrary. Okay, girls seem very active today. Okay, guys, come on, give them some competition. Okay, all right. So whenever we come across the word however, okay, we can use we can understand that there is some contradiction coming up. Okay, however, you can use it in an example and check it for yourself. Okay, so if someone is saying the weather was good today, however, there was a little drizzling, right? So whenever there is a word however, there is something contrasting coming up, right? Yes, agree with me? Correct. All right. So Frederick Engels, again, we don't want to know who Frederick Engels is. However, predicted that women would be liberated from the social, legal, economic subordination. Okay. Now, social, legal, economic, and there can be many other adjectives that the author could have used. Social, legal, economic, and what you call physical, mental, whatever subordination, right? Okay, but he's telling social, legal, economic subordination. Okay, again, we don't want to know what kind of subordination. Basically, he's trying to tell us that women would be liberated from the shackles, from the barriers that traditional barriers that they used to have. Okay, so he predicted that women would be liberated from those traditional barriers of the family by technological developments that made possible the recruitment of the whole female sex into public industry. Okay, so now that made possible the recruitment of the whole female sex. Okay, so he is saying that that women would be free from all these traditional barriers. Okay, which was made possible because of women starting to work, women starting to go to factories and work. Okay, that was a simple meaning. There was a simple meaning, and just to make it just to give it a little more, just to give it a little more, just to garnish it a little more, the author has written it like this. Okay, in a way that that sounds in a way that sounds very difficult. Okay, but actually the author is trying to convey a simple message using a very long sentence. Okay, so all clear by the second sentence? Understood the second sentence? Yes? Right. Okay. Now looking at it in overall point of view, the first sentence, okay, the author introduced someone and said that his opinion was this. Okay. In the second sentence, he used the word however and said that there was another person who had a different opinion, and his opinion was this. Okay, so he gave two different opinions of two different people, and then how does he end with the last sentence? Okay, so obviously he has to conclude. Okay, based on that. So how does he conclude? Observers thus differed on the social effects of mechanization, but they agreed that it would transform women's lives. Okay, so the author says everyone agreed that everyone had different opinions on women starting to work here, but everyone also agreed that it would really change their women's lives. Okay, clear till now? Understood the passage? Yes. Okay, so how many how many coordinating conjunctions did you see? right? Okay, so there were three coordinating conjunctions that that we used to break down the sentence. Okay, and there was one major major subordinating conjunction that we saw. What was it? However, right? Okay, so that these conjunctions help you to understand the sentence. Yes, right? Okay, so now you know how it's done. Okay, so shall we look at one more example very quickly, and then we'll look at some actual questions from the GRE passage. Yes, and this time I'm going to ask Tejas. Tejas, I'm going to ask you some questions. Be very ready with it. Right? Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So I'll read it out again. It's a new passage. The recent change to all volunteer armed forces in the United States will eventually produce a gradual increase in the proportion of women in the armed forces and in the variety of women's assignments, but probably not the dramatic gains for women that might have been expected. This is so even though the armed forces operate in an ethos of institutional change oriented toward occupational equality and under the federal sanction of equal pay for equal work. How many of you understood? Hari understood. Tushar understood. Adyasha says confusing. No, somewhat, partly. Rajat says understood. Manijendra says understood. Ashna says partly. Tejas hasn't understood apparently. Okay. Somewhat confusing says Nabiha. Last sentence is a little bit confused. Okay, says Tarun. Not able to understand says Meena. Okay. Okay, shall we split it again? Shall we see how to understand this passage? Yes? Okay. Okay, now how many sentences are there in this sentence? 2 or 3? 2, correct. Okay, almost all of you are right. There are 2 sentences. Okay. Okay, now let's see how to split them. Okay, so the recent change to all volunteer armed forces in the United States will eventually produce a gradual increase in the number of will eventually produce a gradual increase in the proportion of women in the armed forces. Okay, all right. So I'll show you another slide exactly depicting what how do we break it. Okay, so the first sentence, the recent change to all volunteer armed forces in the United States will eventually produce a gradual increase in the proportion of women in the armed forces. Okay, so that is one long sentence. Okay, and in the variety of women's assignments. Okay, now let's see. Let's see what is the idea. Okay, so the recent change to all volunteer armed forces. Now all volunteer armed forces is you can consider it a noun. Okay, you can take that as one single word. Okay, all volunteer armed forces is some is an organization. Okay, it's actually a U.S. Army. Okay, all volunteer armed forces. Okay. Okay, so that 4 words is actually only one word. Okay, it's just making the sentence long. Okay, so the recent change to all volunteer armed forces in the United States will eventually produce a gradual increase in the proportion of women in the armed forces. Okay, so the author is trying to say that there was some change that happened in the all volunteer armed forces, due to which the number of women in the armed forces will increase. Okay, so instead of saying simply that armed force the number of women will increase, he's using an ornamental language. He's using a quite a different language to make it sound beautiful. Okay, eventually produce a gradual increase in the proportion of women in the armed forces. Okay, all he wants to say is due to the change, the number of women is going to increase, will eventually increase. Okay. Now what comes next? And in the variety of women's assignments. So the recent change in the all volunteer armed forces will increase the number of women as well as the variety of women's assignments. Okay. So there are two things that the author is expecting to change. Okay. The number of women and the variety of women's assignments. Okay. Now, but, so whenever there is a but, what do you infer? What do you infer whenever there is a word but? What do you infer? Ashna says contrast. Gokul says something opposite. Tejas says opposite. Contradiction. Right. Okay. So again, when we use the word but, there is you can expect something contradictory, right? Again, you can use it in a sentence to see, does it really happen? Okay. So see, again, take the same example. The weather was good today, but there was a slight drizzle. Okay. So the word but there gives a contradictory meaning. Okay. Right. Okay. So, but probably not the dramatic gains for women that might have been expected. Okay. So now see, the author was expecting a change in the armed forces. Okay. Number of women should go up, and number of variety in women's assignment will also go up. The author clearly says. Okay. But probably not the dramatic gains for women that might have been expected. Okay. So the author was expecting a huge change, a dramatic change, dramatic gains for women. Okay. But it didn't happen. Okay. So author had expected dramatic gains for women. That didn't happen, not up to his expectation, as Arushi says. Correct. Okay. So what is the tone of the author here? What can you understand by this sentence, by this last sentence that we read? What can you infer about the author's attitude? So guys, you have to be very quick. Not very satisfied, says Marky. Correct. Dara says he is sad. Right. So he is a little disappointed, right? He was expecting something. He was expecting a huge change. Okay. But some change happened in the armed forces, but it was not up to the mark. It was not as expected by the author. Okay. So he's slightly displeasured. Okay. As Bhuvanesh put it, okay, he's slightly displeasured, or he is slightly disappointed. Okay. So now we know the author is slightly disappointed. Okay. So now what next? What does he say next? Okay, so this is so even though the armed forces operate in an ethos of institutional change oriented toward occupational equality. Okay, so he's saying this is so even though the armed forces operate in an ethos of institutional change. Now, ethos is the culture and the ethics that the army works in. Okay, the army works in a culture, in a tradition, or in a what you call, in some ethics. The army has some ethics, or army has some set of rules that they follow. Okay, the rules of institutional change oriented towards occupational equality. Okay, so the author is saying that army has always supported occupational equality. Okay, no matter whoever it is in the army, they are given equal importance. Okay, even though the armed forces operate in an ethos of institutional change oriented toward occupational equality and under the federal sanction of equal pay for equal work. Okay, and they also have a US law. Federal sanction is also federal sanction is just a informal name of the US law, US government law. Okay, so the federal sanction, under the federal sanction of equal pay for equal work. So he's saying the army treats everyone equally. The army gives equal pay for equal work for everyone. Okay, but still these things are happening. Okay, they have not given dramatic gains for women as they were expecting. Okay, since the author has a high expectation on the army. Okay, the army is not able to fulfill his expectations. Okay, so he is slightly disappointed. Okay, All clear till now? Understood what the passage is? Understood what the passage says? Clear? Crystal clear? Yes? Okay, almost all of you are saying yes, crystal clear. Okay, Tarun wants me to explain the last but one sentence again. Okay, last but one sentence, Tarun. I think there are only two sentences. All right. Okay. Okay. So Tarun, the author here says that there was some change made in the armed forces that will eventually increase the number of women as well as the number of women's assignments. Okay, but the author is saying, okay, even though they'll increase the number of women and their assignments, okay, this is not the gains that he was expecting. He was expecting even more. Okay, so the author has high expectations. Okay, now why he has high expectations? The author is explaining in the next sentence. Okay, this is so even though the armed forces operate in an ethos of institutional change. Okay, so now army operates under ethics of occupational equality. They treat everyone equally, right? They don't discriminate between men or women. Okay, they don't have this discrimination, even though they operate like this, and also they pay equal for equal work. Okay, they are not able to provide dramatic gains for women. Okay, so that is what the author means. Okay, all clear till now? I hope I have answered your query. Okay, all understood? Yes. Okay, all clear? Everyone, guys, I'm asking everyone. Yes? Okay. Okay, now shall we see one question? I'll ask you a question. Let's see, are you actually clear with the passage? Okay, which of the following are true based on the information provided in the passage? The increase in the proportion of women in armed forces will bring dramatic gains for women. Pay for women in the armed forces is as high as those of men. The attitude of armed forces towards occupational equality is condescending. Which one is correct? 3 says Shravan, Chirag says 3, Samir says 3, Manoj says 2, Hari says 2, Ashna says 3, 2 and 3. Okay, I'll give you one more clue. Which of the following are true? Okay, there is only one option. There is only one answer. Ashna says 2 and 3. Arushi says 1 and 2. There is only one right answer. Vishnu says 1. Okay. All right, guys, I'm afraid to say that many of you haven't got the right answer. Okay. The right answer is option number 2. Pay for women in armed forces is as high as those of men. How many of you got it right? Tejas is saying Tejas got it right. Gokul got it right. Right. Okay, I'll tell you who was the first person to get it right. The first person to get it right was Manoj. A big round of applause for Manoj, guys. Well done, Manoj. That was very quick and very well done. Right. Okay. So, guys, do you know what is the reason for option number 2 to be the right answer? No. Okay. So let's go back to the passage again. Okay, let me be on this slide. Okay. So now let's see the first option. The increase in the proportion of women in the armed forces will bring dramatic gains for women. Okay. So, all right. So the increase in the proportion of women in the armed forces will bring gains for women. Now the author says it will increase the number of women in the armed forces. It will also increase the number of women's assignments. Okay, but the gains that he was expecting for women, it did not happen. He was disappointed, right? Agree with me? The gains that he was expecting did not happen, right? So the first option is incorrect. Okay, it's not true. Okay, so eliminating the first option. Okay, now coming to the third option, the attitude of the armed forces towards occupational equality is condescending. Okay, anywhere in the article did the author say that their attitude was condescending? No, not at all, right? Okay, so author never said that their attitude was condescending. Instead, in fact, the author even said that they work in a very good ethical environment. Okay, they work under equal pay for equal work. Okay, occupational equality. Okay, the author had a very good image of the armed forces. Okay, so he was expecting very much from the armed forces. Okay, so never in the article did he say that their attitude was condescending. Okay, so what we learn from this is that we should not assume. You should never assume. Okay, whatever it's in the article, you should infer from that, but never assume what is going to what are you being expected from the question. Okay, never assume your own stuff. Okay, infer from the article. Try to infer from the article as such. Okay, so the third option can be eliminated. Okay, now coming to the second option, pay for women in the armed forces is as high as those of men. Okay, so the author clearly says equal pay for equal work, as Shravan you pointed out. Okay, the author thinks that army works under equal pay for equal work. Okay, so the pay for women will obviously be as high as those of men. Correct? Yes, agree with me? Understood? Okay. So guys, so these are the basic principles you should apply in any RC passage. Okay, that will definitely help you to understand them. Okay, so these principles, they won't these things, you won't be able to get it as soon as the first time you read. Okay, but once you start practicing, once you are you have done five say 4 or 5 articles. Okay, this will be this will help you a lot. Okay, you will be much better at it, much faster at it. Okay, and you'll start enjoying the act of reading an RC passage. Okay, you'll be much faster, you'll be understanding much more. Okay, and apart from that, I'll also tell you, whenever you are reading something else, anything other than RC passage, okay, when you're reading anything, okay, say a blog post or a newspaper article, anything, you try to apply these techniques. Okay, once you start doing this, the more and more you practice, okay, it will stick to your subconscious mind. Okay, and it will make your work much more easier. Okay, so that was so that was theory. Okay, that was mostly theory, how the techniques are used. Okay, that now it's in your hands to put them in practice. Okay, now again, to help you with practice, there are some tips, and there is some method of preparation and method of studying that is recommended by experts at GRE Edge. Okay, so to tell you that, to explain what is that, I'm going to hand over the mic again to my colleague Samat, who you guys talked early in the beginning of the seminar. He's going to tell you how to apply these techniques in practice, and get the best out of your RC section. Okay, so handing over the mic to Samat.
Thank you, Mani. Thank you, Mani. Okay. Okay. So how are you guys doing? Good. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about now is how you can get a high score by joining GRE Edge. Okay. Now, how many of you have friends or relatives who have joined GRE Edge? Anybody here? Okay, my sister says Adishya. Okay, Bhunesh has. Okay, Chirag also has. Smarky, Samir has a friend. Chirag has a friend. Smarky Mohanty has brothers and friends. All right, no problem. Okay, but how many of you have an understanding of how GREH helps students boost their scores? Okay, Manoj has a friend. Okay, Arushi has an idea. Okay, no idea says Adishya. Okay, as a guidance, very good. Amuddin says I'm a noob. Very time saving says Samir. Okay, so I think a lot of you don't have don't know how is that GREH helps students. Okay, so how many of you would be interested to know about this? All right, Bhunesh, Sri, Gokul, Samir. All right. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, and I hope all of you participate. Okay. That way, we'll keep it interactive and enjoy this. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, give me some examples of skills that you know. Okay, presentation skills, cooking, writing, persuasion, eliminating, driving, imagination, comparing, very important talking skills. All right, analyzing, word building, understanding, singing, biking. All right. Okay. Now some of you would have this in your mind. Why am I asking you this question? Does anybody have that question in mind? Dancing, thinking. Yes, says Gokul. Exactly. All right. Because GRE is also a skill-based test. Okay. It needs you to master multiple skills: writing, reading, analyzing, visualizing, word building. Okay. Time management, speed, accuracy. Okay. It requires you to master a lot of skills. Okay. Now you consider all these skills that you told me. Okay. What is common between them? All of them. How do you improve those skills? Practice. Right. Strategy. More practice. Practice. Okay, so mostly everybody says practice, and Samir says strategy. Right. So you need both of them. Okay, strategy will make make sure you follow the right path. Okay, and practice will make sure that you master it. Right. Now you also need to practice GRE questions in order to master your GRE. Okay, so that's exactly the philosophy that we use. Okay, now let us consider one more example. Okay, of a skill that somebody told me of driving. Okay, Gokul Gokul gave that example of driving. Now, how many of you know driving? Okay, a lot of you know driving. Okay, so how did you learn driving? Or those who don't know, how do you plan to learn driving? Did you read a book? Did you watch a video? or did you go to a classroom? None of them? Gokul says practice only can make it. Driving school, says Adisha, by practicing daily. Someone taught me, says Sri. Working under guide, says Samir. By doing mistakes. Okay. So do you think it is possible to learn in any other way than not driving a car? No? Right. Now, if you, okay, now let's consider that you have a car, okay, and you try to learn on your own. How successful will you be? Ayushi says online simulators. 50% says Raman, partly says Gokul, 0% says Manichandran, very less. Okay. Now, if you had to learn on your own, what are the risks that you'll face? Little slow, but will catch up, says Samir. Accident, it'll take time, will crash, no motivation, right? So what will happen if you try to learn the car on your own is that you might do a lot of mistakes, you might crash, right? You might spend a lot of time, you might lose motivation when you stop learning, and it will take a lot of time to learn, right? Now, if you had a trainer sitting next to you and guiding you, would that make a difference? Surely. Okay, how different will it be? You'll not make many mistakes. You'll lose fear. You'll have motivation, time saving, confidence. Right. Okay. So we have a similar philosophy at GREH. Okay. Now each one of you who joins GREH gets 2 personal trainers. Okay. One for verbal and another one for quant. Okay. Now, they will talk to you and they will take a diagnostic test also. Okay. Based on the results of the diagnostic test, they will be able to understand what are your weak areas and what are the areas you're strong in. Okay. Now, if each one of you knew, what are the areas you're weak in and what are the areas you're strong at, which one will you focus? How will your preparation be different? Ayushi says you'll focus on weak areas. Right. Okay, so you'll focus on weak areas and you'll try to make them strong. Okay, and all the areas that you're strong in, you'll try to you'll try to become perfect in them such that you get a high score. Isn't that what you would do? Okay, so this is exactly how you will have a very personalized study plan. Okay, and also content. Okay, also the lessons and the practice material that you will be getting will also be personalized. Okay, now when you're practicing, like when you're driving a car, okay, you have a speedometer, right, and you also have a trainer sitting next to you, correct? Okay, so similarly, just like you have a speedometer which is constantly giving you feedback, constantly collecting all the data. Okay, what is the engine speed, what is the car speed, okay, what is the temperature, what is how much is the power left, all these kind of data. Okay, for that we have a technology like that which is called millisecond monitoring. Okay, so all this data is collected of how much time you spend on every question. Okay, how much time are you taking to learn a concept? Okay, why are you making a particular type of mistake? Okay, what are the areas you're weak in? Which are the areas that you need to improve? Okay, how can you reach your target score? All these kind of data are collected. Okay, and it is personal trainers who will give you personalized feedback based upon that, so that you can improve every time you practice. Okay, now when you're practicing, what kind of questions would you like to practice? When you're appearing for an exam, what kind of questions would you like to practice? The ones that appear in exam, or the ones that are not mostly likely to appear in the exam? More difficult ones? Google says the ones that appear in exam, likely to appear in exam. Right. Okay. So initially you will be practicing questions to learn concepts. Okay. So once you have confident learning concepts, you will move on to practice questions that are most likely to appear in an exam. Okay. And these kind of questions are called the GRE style tests. Okay. The GRE style questions. Okay. And you will be practicing a lot of them, and you will be getting feedback on each of them. Okay. And you also have the facility of asking doubts, okay, and getting them clarified from your personal trainers. Okay. Now, how many of you would like to prepare like this? Gokul, Sri Chandrika,